project as it currently is proposed.
Okay. And do you want to say why?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were going to get into all that now, but
well, just briefly, then we'll have a general discussion. Oh yeah, and then by the way, Roger will just keep the list of issues that we have here, and then we'll send out notes afterwards.
Okay, and I just want to clarify in case it wasn't absolutely clear. I don't want my image to be on camera.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Do not.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my issue is mainly aesthetics, noise, and visual clutter, and so those are my big concerns.
Okay.
And the impact, therefore, on.
So, Brenda had emailed us and asked if we wanted to give an overview of the project, which I'm happy to.
Actually, that might help frame it up a little bit. So, but let's just do a quick round of introductions, and then we could do that.
Would you mind asking Jennifer what your job is at Verizon Cell Towers?
Oh yeah, sure.
Sure. My title is I'm a real estate specialist.
Okay.
And I report to Robin, and I am the project manager for this small cell project.
Thanks.
Okay. So, please.
Okay, my name is Radha Sharma, and I am with Verizon Wireless. I am the senior real estate manager for Northern California and Nevada. So my job is to manage the real estate aspect of all of our small cell and macro deployments.
Okay.
For this geography.
Okay, great.
Michael Merchant, live at 2360 Cowper Street,
Okay.
which is a potential site at the foot of our driveway for an enhancement pole. The concerns I have are a little bit noise, some visuals. More importantly, there's radio frequency interference stuff around that pole already because of some leftover things that are still up there, and they interfere with some radio stuff around our home AM, FM, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And property value, I had the opportunity to sell a home a few years ago that my mother lived in, and people came with a small meter to evaluate any radio frequencies that were at the property. And although that person bought the house, they were very concerned they turned down houses because the meter showed radio signals there. So I don't want our nice little house in Palo Alto to have impact on, if we ever resell.
I see. Okay. Please.
Jeannie Fleming. I know most of you, I think, or certainly we've crossed paths before. And like I guess everybody else who's lives here, who's spoken so far, I'm concerned about noise, I'm concerned about aesthetics. And in particular, I'm part of a group called United Neighbors, which is asking the city to overturn Director Gittelman's decision, which allowed Verizon to put its equipment on the poles here. And instead ask that Verizon put its equipment underground, and that we are promised that no noisy equipment will be added at any time.
Okay.
So Herc Kwan, 2490 Lewis Road. My house also has a pole basically with Verizon planning to put equipment just in front of my house right there, and I have the same concern. I'm actually part of the United Neighbors.
And the concerns specifically are?
It's the same thing as well.
Okay. 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 Please.
I'm Tina Chow, and I live in the Barron Park neighborhood here, and I share the concerns that other people have mentioned.
Okay.
And I think Verizon needs to do the best job, not the most convenient job, for all of the reasons that are listed: property value, aesthetics, noise, and health reasons. Even though that is not something that is debated here, it's part of the decisions that people make who live here, and I don't want to be exposed to things that have been tested on small cell distributions like this.
Okay.
Ann Lum, I'm at 781 Barron Avenue. I walked over here. I enjoy my neighborhood. I walk around my neighborhood a lot. I do not need any more things hanging off the telephone poles, especially one right in front of my house. And we already have some equipment just half a block away from us, so I don't understand why we have to have more. I don't believe that today is a representation of the concerns in our neighborhood. It is Mother's Day. A lot of people are, with their families. This is a very inconvenient time, and I don't think that.
Well, we've actually had
multiple. I know. I realize that.
Yeah.
And I've sat through multiple city council meetings that lasted till 11:30 at night. So I've felt the pain, and I've been a part of this process in voicing my concerns.
Do you think that is there anything that hasn't been said yet that you'd like to add?
I think health issue is an issue, and I understand that you know, school. I have a school right across the street from me.
Mm-hmm.
Schools are not having Wi-Fi. They do not want Wi-Fi. They do not want the students exposed. So you're exposing them at home. You know, I think that is a serious concern. Mm-hmm. And all of my neighbors, I've talked to my neighbors. They're very concerned about it. We have young children across the street. We have young children up and down the block.
Okay. Okay, but is this list pretty complete, or is there anything else?
And I think also, you know, what's the monetary, you know, recuperation for the city, for the residents? Is there any? It sounded like, you know, from.
I'd really like to follow up on Ann's point, especially since we have Jennifer and Rada here today, and that is, we know that Verizon is only going to be paying, is it $280 a year per pole, or $285 a year per pole? And I'm wondering, since you folks are the real estate specialists, if you could explain how that is. I know that in other communities, the number is far higher, $4,000, $5,000, even $10,000 per pole per year. Why are you folks paying the city of Palo Alto $285 a year rent per pole?
I don't know that we can speak to that necessarily today,
Well,
because
that's a concern. And you know, besides that, the monetary, but I am concerned about aesthetics, noise, you know, all the gamut there.
Okay. Okay. We'll
I think
get
it's
there.
all.
Can I bring up one thing? It was just brought out that this enhancement program is taking a current technology, which is called wireless 4G, fourth generation. Fifth generation is already specified and beginning to become available, and within the next few years it's going to come up pretty quick. And I didn't hear that you have, and you're real estate oriented, not tech oriented. I'm tech oriented, and I have owned real estate in different places. If you put in whatever it costs to put a pole up, and most of the radios, you have to replace the radio equipment itself to go to the next generation. And the next generation is going to be wider coverage, much higher speed, and therefore fewer poles needed. So an increase of density now with 4G technology will actually have a shorter life than if the same amount of effort, and if it takes this much effort to get something approved, they should be doing 5G and looking at fewer poles, and less impact on the community housing, and less potential for somebody coming up with a radio signal meter and saying, oh, I don't want to buy your house because it's got this level of radio.
Okay, so what I'd like to try to do is, hold on. I think we have a pretty big list of issues here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to give the folks from Verizon just a chance to kind of respond, maybe talk a little bit about the program, just so that the folks here and the folks watching online have a chance to kind of understand your perspective.
Can I just interrupt for 1 minute? We've been talking about this issue for a long time now in Palo Alto, and I'm guessing almost everybody at this table is pretty familiar with what it is that Verizon has in mind to do in the city. I know I am extremely familiar with what you have in mind. So, you know, Greg, I mean, this is not the first time we've met with you. We've met with you now.
Yeah, sure.
It's our first time.
Yeah.
So we would
Well,
really like the
I think you guys
opportunity.
know what your plan is, so you
Well,
don't need to be
Jeannie,
introduced.
that's right. Let's just I think,
it'd be nice to level set.
yeah, I think it would be good if they could just talk about what their perspective is on these issues. Maybe most people know, maybe not, but I'll have to give them a chance just to express what is your point of view.
Sure. So I just wanted to take a minute just to kind of set the context of why we're even here, and because Verizon is trying to meet the existing coverage and capacity demands, and this is happening all over California. You know, half of homes now in America don't even have landlines. Everyone's relying on their mobile phones. You know, the average American household has 13 connected devices. One thing I was actually thinking about on my way down here today is that, you know, we're living in this really remarkable time. Like, would you have ever thought that you'd be meeting with your city council person streaming on Facebook Live, that any constituent in the city can be watching this meeting on their phone. So it's a really representative example of like this is what's happening in today's world. So when we started this Palo Alto project, we are really trying to design this network that's the least intrusive to the community. We're not building any new poles. We're not building new towers. We are trying to attach infrastructure to the existing poles that are already in the public right of way. We have been working with multiple city departments in urban forestry so that we can actually plant trees and donate trees to the city to better screen the equipment. When there's an opportunity, we're working with the utilities department to try to select the pole and the plant it more top most viable. Hear me out. I do want to make one really point of clarification that I've heard all around the table today. The current project that was recently approved by the architecture review board has no noise. There's no noise from the at all.
Catherine, though, it seems to me that your attorney, Paul Britton, made it very clear at the last meeting that at any time Verizon can and typically does come back and put a battery pack on those poles. And he made it absolutely clear that they can probably simply go right ahead and do that.
I think there
So-
might be a little bit of a misunderstanding on that.
He
So,
was rather clear, ma'am.
well, if I could explain that specific issue. So right now, the battery packs, the battery units that Verizon has available do not meet the Palo Alto noise ordinance. So if, for example, if this got built and we came back and wanted to add batteries, we would submit an application with a noise study. It's then peer reviewed by an acoustical engineer that the city hires, and they would come back and say whether or not it complies. Then we would have to go back to the architectural review board because most likely the size of the battery cabinets available today would defeat the purpose, would defeat the stealthing of the site. So we would have to go through the exact same process. So there's, I think there was maybe some misunderstanding around that.
Okay, so so I'd like to maybe, just because we don't have that much time, what I'd like to try to do is, if you guys can, right? If you guys can address each one of the issues one by one, just so we can hear your perspective on them. Would that be okay? Because maybe just a little bit on each item.
You're gonna test my eyesight.
Well, Rod,
Sorry.
read it off to you. Why don't you read it off, the first one?
So, in your review, radio frequency interference from the poles.
Interference. I don't.
So I think someone mentioned, was it you or someone mentioned that?
These guys are not tech, right?
That and I did want to say one thing. You know, I really appreciate everybody coming today, especially on Mother's Day. We know this is important to you. It's important to us as well. And it is just us today. So we're going to do our best to answer your questions, and we might need to take some and do some follow up. So,
Yeah, as far as the radio frequency interference goes, we work within the FCC requirements as far as interfering with other approved signals. And so we work within that. I think that's a separate issue than the radio frequency for health concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can say about that is that we are compliant with the FCC limitations regarding what parameters we can be around.
Okay, but more specific, I mean, is this interrupting people's like AM, FM radio transmission?
Sorry?
Is this interfering with people's AM or FM radio transmission?
It should not.
It should not.
No. I mean, we commonly locate on radio stations as well. And we make sure, and we work with them to
Okay.
make sure that we're not.
Who's the person that asked about that? Oh yeah, okay. So can you, what,
We have abandoned equipment which was put in for early, not cellular, but cell-oriented communications equipment for computers and stuff, where you buy a thing, plug it into your laptop,
Yeah.
and you could get connected. And it's left over. It was powered from the light pole, and they're still there. And when I back out of my driveway, my AM radio goes nuts
Oh,
because
wow.
it's interfered with.
Okay.
I can lose cell calls occasionally from stuff like that. The level of signals may not be huge, 100 feet away, which is maybe what people think about to their house from a pole or something, but right at the poles, it's significant enough to interfere with AM and FM, mostly AM, but that's still used. And it still means that little lady that came in with the little meter and said our house was okay because we didn't have a registered signal. And it was the first time I've ever seen that. And the lady ended up buying the house because it didn't have any radio signal identification anywhere walking around the whole property.
Okay.
So those things are real and they're just there.
Okay. So let's go to the next one. What's the next one, Rob?
The house value.
House values. Okay, that's you guys are real estate. You guys should know a little bit about this.
So house values. So this is we can't speak to the specifics of your individual homes and the effect on property values. We always encourage you to talk to your individual realtor or appraiser's office. But what we can say is that what we're finding, and there've been a number of news articles talking about the importance of new home buyers, and actually the millennial crowd is in really they place one of, I believe it's the highest. If they put in ranking of what's most important to them, it's having reliable wireless service in their homes. So,
When you buy a house, that's your number one thing. Are you serious?
There was
That's
an
what the
article
survey said?
in Money Magazine.
Could you cite some data on that point,
Yeah,
Mary?
I'd be happy to send you the article.
No, I don't read Money Magazine. Can you cite me data that says that there's a large sector of the population that use it as desirable to have a utility pole with hundreds of pounds of equipment on it next to their home?
And that it's the number one thing when they're looking for a house.
Oh yeah, that does sound
I
ridiculous.
mean, we would like some data on
I'd be
that
happy
point.
to send you some.
Okay, but please not Money Magazine. We want actual.
I can
Data.
input something here. Wi-Fi access inside buildings is a huge issue. The recently closed building for the One Drop of Blood people, Therion, whatever it is, up.
Oh, there it
Oregon
is, yeah.
Expressway.
Right.
I was asked to come in there and look at amplifying outside Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, cellular signals for their employees inside the building. And it was going to cost thousands of dollars because they had a metallized film on the glass, they had a steel roof with foam on top. And so they built basically a cage where the cellular signals did not get in or out well. They were willing to spend thousands of dollars in order to get cellular signals inside the building so they could use it. So people do that. There are all sorts of companies around that build little things so you can put an antenna out and point it at a Verizon or some other site. And I've installed them and then amplified the signal inside the building. So that is a concern, but the way we build buildings now with foil in the insulation and metal roofs and all that sort of stuff, it's going to become an even larger problem that you can't solve by just having a closer site.
Are you suggesting that homeowners might be able to do that themselves if they want a stronger signal, or?
Not that they may, they certainly can. They can now.
They
There
can
are
boost
several.
their
They
signal
can
now.
boost the signal now. They point it at an antenna somewhere in the neighborhood, and it goes inside the building and then amplifies inside the building. But then inside the building, you have shower stalls and bathroom with metal scrim in the background that makes an antenna distribution even inside a building sometimes difficult. So the technology stuff that we're talking about, it's a moving target.
Along those lines,
And it's radio specific. So if you
most
buy a
carriers
solution
support calls over Wi-Fi, cellular calls over Wi-Fi. So if you have Wi-Fi in your home, you can do pretty much everything you need to do with your cell phone, including make cellular calls through your Wi-Fi network.
Okay, so I think let's go to the next one. Which one's next?
Health problems.
Okay, so you guys have a response to that?
I think we gave our response that we're compliant with the FCC regulations that dictate what limitations we can have.
Okay, and who's the one that ever brought up the question about health?
Health concerns.
Okay, so do you guys have any more color on that?
Don't believe that. Anyway,
I think
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, regardless of the FCC regulations, common perception is that there are health effects, and there are hundreds of studies showing that there are health effects. So the FCC is behind the times.
Yeah.
If you look at different countries, they've got much stricter regulations, and people here are smart and they know that.
Just out of curiosity, has Verizon conducted any studies in this area looking at the possible health effects of their equipment?
I don't believe that we have, but at the
Or
last
supported
ARB hearing,
the research of others who've looked into this issue? Have you
at the
folks done
last
that?
ARB hearing, we did have an independent third-party engineer there, Hammond Edison,
Ma'am, they
who
are not an
conducted
independent third party.
I'm sorry, can I finish, please? And
Well, you're saying things that aren't the truth.
Well,
Hammond
let-
Edison
But we do need to
Wait, hold on,
get
hold on.
sentences out.
Let's let her finish, then you guys could kind of argue. But go ahead, please.
okay, I'd like to have at least
Yeah,
be
please,
able to have
please.
a chance to answer the question. And so we did have an independent third-party engineer there, Hammond Edison, who kind of spoke to the study that they did as far as what the impacts were. And I think we'd be more than happy to have them come speak. they have more experience in that field
Okay.
than we would.
Ma'am, is Verizon a client of Hammett and Edison? Do you ever pay Hammett and Edison?
Yes, we do.
Or
We pay them
how can they
directly.
possibly be
We're
described
not the
as a
only,
as a neutral third party? What are you talking about?
we're not the only ones that pay them. They're also hired by other cities. They're hired by
How
to do
big,
peer
how big a
reviews.
client are you for Hammett and Edison? Because I have looked at hundreds of applications that you have submitted in different places, and Hammett and Edison is providing a report in support of your application in all those locations. How can you possibly say they are neutral? That's
Well,
ludicrous.
we actually, the city, you might not be aware, but the city actually had a peer review of those reports prepared by Hammond and Edison, verifying the data.
That does not speak well for the city.
Well, I'm trying to.
I mean,
explain
what
to
you're
you.
talking about is some kind of co-optation going on here that is very ugly. Look, I really apologize. I unfortunately have to leave really early today. But since we are fortunate enough to have these two real estate specialists from Verizon here, I'd really like to go back for one moment to this issue of how much Palo Alto pays for these poles. $285 a year in rent. Will you tell me, ma'am, what do you pay for a site like that in San Francisco? What do you pay in San Diego?
I personally am not familiar with those projects, but I would actually defer this question to Councilmember Tanaka, because we, Verizon entered into a master license agreement with the city on that rate, and I wasn't a part of the project at that time. I don't know if you were on the
Well,
council at that
are
time.
you familiar with what prices are paid in other towns?
Unfortunately not.
Yes, I didn't think you were. And I doubt very much that Councilmember Tanaka and I personally negotiated this deal with you. I would like to know how you got a deal in which you pay $280 a year per pole. You are paying orders of magnitude more
Can
than
Verizon
macro towers.
tell us what the numbers are for other cities? I mean, maybe you guys can do it right now, but it's something can you guys research and let us know what the prices are for other cities?
I'm not sure if we can disclose that information. I think it's public knowledge, but we can look into that.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely public.
Public knowledge, but you can't disclose it.
I mean, I don't know that we would have that information to disclose.
You are the
Okay,
real
okay,
estate.
fine.
You are the real estate specialist. You are the real estate manager. You describe yourself as having a geographical area that is large. How can you not know these
Well, I
prices?
don't
that you
know.
pay?
I don't know them off the top of my head. And also, it is a
Would
separate
you
department.
mind? Could you write
It's also a
to?
separate
Could you please
department
write
that
to
has the
Councilmember Tanaka
master
and
license
inform
agreements.
him what
It's
prices
not
you
our,
pay per
it's not our
pole
team
in
that
other
does
cities?
that.
Okay, so we'll make that request. So Jeannie, do you have any last things before you leave, Jeannie? No.
Pardon me.
Do you have any last things before you take off?
Really, I just want to repeat what I just said, which is, ma'am, you do have this information. You obviously do. I would really appreciate it if you would let Mr. Tanaka know how much you're paying for comparable locations. Let's just say utility poles and make it easy. For utility pole sites on which you propose to locate equipment in other communities. And let me just give you a few. San Francisco, San Diego, Santa Barbara. Okay? You've got the information,
Or if you can
right?
sell us even Mountain View, that would be great too, right? Mountain View or Little
No,
Park.
give us as many
Yeah.
as possible. We would love to know the comparative prices you're paying for these poles.
Okay, well,
I'm
thank
so
you,
sorry
thank you
I
for
have to
attending. Okay, so let's go next.
Very nice to
what's,
see
What's the next one?
Uh,
What's the next one?
monetary compensation.
Okay, she talked about that. She got that. Okay.
Uh,
What's another one?
The 5G and
Okay,
input.
I don't know
Is,
if you
is
guys.
this necessary with 5G?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 4G densification project. So we're densifying, we're having an increase in capacity right now, right, with 4G. And that is the technology that we're deploying. And so that's what this project is focused around. It's in the near future, when I'm talking about the next 4 to 5 years, I don't think we don't envision that 5G is going to replace 4G.
Well, it's certainly an additive process, so that you don't always replace. But the 5G, I'm somewhat lucky because I deal with this stuff to hook up people for computers, and the fiber to the home may not occur. And we all think, boy, we're going to get fiber to the home. It's going to solve all our problems, and we can do calls over Wi-Fi to our home base, and home base will get fiber out. But the words that I'm getting from people who are physically installing this stuff relate to 5G replacing the last 100 yards or half mile from the neighborhood box to the home. And so therefore people aren't going to have installers, and costs being what they are, labor is the biggest cost of everything. You can amortize equipment, you can compare it to whatever you want, but 5G will in fact supplant fiber to the home for some vendors, maybe not Verizon, but for some vendors, and it's going to be fewer poles, wider coverage, and if somebody's worried about it at the foot of their driveway or next to their middle of their house or wherever the pole is, they won't be there. They'll be where the neighborhood box is.
Sorry, you wanted to say something?
There's 2 points I also wanted to add. The proliferation of after Verizon, are we going to have AT&T? Are we going to have other carriers, Sprint, wanting to put on their own?
Okay, I don't think they can
equipment?
answer that per se, but okay.
But that's my concern.
That's fine. Yeah.
And then I thought that we were promised underground utilities so that by the city of Palo Alto. Orm Street is a beautiful example of a lovely street that has no telephone pole. They have a beautiful, beautiful, street lamps and no telephone poles, telephone lines crisscrossing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that my street is like got gazillions and double telephone poles?
My street too.
It's ugly, it's awful, and then I walk down.
What street did you say that has Orm?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not for Verizon, but okay.
This is
I get
also a
it.
concern.
Okay.
So,
Right. I came to this meeting not specifically for Verizon, but more to talk to you and about all of our concerns about these polls.
Understood.
And I don't need actually to hear a lot from Verizon.
Well, I would
want to give them a chance to refute things they want to refute, but I want to make sure we all get a chance to get all of our concerns out.
I agree.
So this underground utilities, wasn't that something that we had voted on and were promised from?
It was before my time.
I don't care, but it's somebody before you made a promise to the
Maybe you
residents
could ask
of Palo
about
Alto.
that.
Yeah. Well, I wonder about myself, to be honest, but I don't know.
This is a promise made.
Because personally, I love to get undergrounding my utilities as well.
We are 25. I'm a 25 plus year resident here, and
I couldn't agree more. When I moved here 30 years ago, I was excited about underground utilities. I hate the wires in front of my house.
Yeah.
The wires caused the pruners to destroy the tree in front of my house, which then got condemned by the city. We're going in the wrong direction with that.
Okay. So
when they're talking about, we're going to donate trees to cover up the things, well, how are you going to cover it up? And you're going to have people going around pruning trees and trying to, cut.
Technically, leaves stop radio signal.
Yeah, you don't want to
If
put
you've got a
trees
dish TV and you
and
want to
these
get to
things.
the television channel, if the tree branch comes in the middle, you have to cut the tree branch.
okay.
Well, I think
So
the
sorry.
whole landscaping in the tree was to cover the associated equipment, not the antenna. The antenna's on the top.
Right.
So that wouldn't cover
Okay.
it.
But in any case, it's
Okay. I just
And the second part,
we have 15 minutes left. So sorry. Go ahead.
the second point, as far as undergrounding of utility poles, if in the event that they were undergrounded, we would relocate our equipment.
Okay.
We've already agreed to that.
Great.
What does that mean?
So
Oh,
Go ahead,
if
you
all
go
the
ahead.
utilities were undergrounded.
Then you wouldn't have
Like
a
on
place
a
to put
street.
yourself.
still need the antenna up somewhere.
right.
They don't work underground.
Okay. So
But that's something that we've agreed to. So we wouldn't put this. We're not putting the city in a position where if they wanted to underground utility poles on a street, that we would be stopping them. We've agreed that we have to work with them and remove the equipment.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
okay. So is there any other issues they haven't addressed?
I mean, they can't respond to other providers
Yeah.
following.
Yeah.
The one thing we can say about other providers is AT&T has already installed these applications within the city of Palo Alto.
Also, they've already completed them.
It's been on air for about a couple of years at least.
Oh. Okay. So wait. So what you guys are doing, AT&T has done already.
Mhm.
But there's more in plan. I saw other proposed things for AT&T come in that I saw in the city.
And I wasn't happy about the AT&T installation either.
Yeah,
Right,
aren't you
right.
happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the AT&T one.
And I don't.
So,
I didn't even
you've
hear
addressed
anything
the
about it.
noise.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
I don't completely trust Verizon on the noise, but you've addressed it. And the AT&T pole makes noise.
Exactly.
And I know that if I was in the front yard of that house, I would be hearing fan all the time.
You can walk by Steve Jobs' house. He has an AT&T tower right out in front of his house. And it was put there early because the man made more phones available for AT&T than, they could turn him down. And you walk by it and there's an air conditioner sound right on the pole. So some of them have that. And that's to cool batteries and chargers. And
So,
stuff.
but beyond the noise, I just wanted to get a chance to say a few things about this proposal in front of my house.
Is this in front of your house?
This is in front of my house.
Oh, this is pictures in front of your house?
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is the simulated installation. And I appreciate that Verizon made a update to the plan, I think, trying to address concerns that they were hearing. So noise was one of them. This proposal, some of the things I found disappointing about the response was like, this angle puts the equipment on the back of the pole. All right. So if you look at this pole,
On the side of your house.
yeah, AT&T, or sorry, Verizon is giving the best possible appearance here by putting their equipment behind the pole in this image. So it's like not very big, is it? Because I think it's kind of misleading. They also added some simulated trees, which I find kind of a joke because they're shorter than humans. And so I don't know what they do at all to improve to hide the equipment. Another thing in the response or in the revised plan was that the equipment can't be buried because we're in a flood zone, or and my sewer lines are in the way of burying the equipment in a vault. My take on that is that it's too expensive to do those things. And I think they should be located elsewhere if the sewer line is in the way or they really can't build a vault that goes underground.
Let me ask Verizon, is your equipment not waterproof? I mean, you can't be,
That's correct.
it's not waterproof?
The radios themselves are not waterproof, and I think that's been a point of confusion. So in order for these radio equipment to be installed in an underground vault, there has to be a significant amount more space. It has to be pumps in the event for anyone to come in. And the radios generate heat, so there have to be fans to get the hot air out. So we have some significant concerns about the viability of vaulting.
I see. And back to the point about, I forget who was talking about the AT&T fans, but was it you? Okay.
I had one down the street.
Okay. So is your equipment the same like noise level as AT&T, or is it less?
What our project that was approved has no noise.
No noise.
It's silent.
Oh, okay.
The vaulting will have noise though, and we believe that the existing vault that we have today will exceed the noise ordinance
Oh, I see.
When it's underground.
when it's underground.
I see. So you're saying that would be less noise than if it was on
There's
the
no
pole?
noise on the vault.
No.
Or it would cost more to make one that is less noisy. Is I think another way to say that.
We have
They
alternative.
exist because they
Okay,
exist.
Pardon?
Exists.
Yeah, I have a problem with the language that says we can't do it because I think it's always a matter of it costs more. Those problems, like noise, is a solvable problem. It may cost more. It's possible to make very complicated or expensive ventilation systems that make very little noise or no noise. It just costs more. And so I don't think it can be termed as impossible or can't be done or we have concerns about it. It's a matter of cost and the priorities I think that Palo Alto wants to have on the neighborhoods and the residents.
Okay. So back to, because we have about,
I don't think we have anything.
we got all this
Yeah.
covered? Okay, great.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question about relocation? We're 100 feet or 70 feet from Oregon Expressway on Kelper Street. And Oregon is pretty much the distant point from the central office from AT&T on Hamilton. So we're kind of the end of the line, and then you switch to a different central office when you switch to the other side, to South Palo Alto. But there are a lot of really nice big metal poles with all sorts of cameras and stuff on them, and you could put an antenna on top. Why can't you go down an arterial like that and be way up in the better antennas in terms of antenna location?
It's kind of late.
You're still going to get power, you're still going to get internet connection because they've got cameras on the poles already. Why do you need to be in the neighborhood on the little wooden poles, which we hope at some time? And by the way, it's before your time, but we were promised a while back to have fiber to the home because Palo Alto bought fiber loop in Palo Alto, and I've never seen anything after the first 100 people had it for 2 years, and then Alto pulled it out. So to the extent that there are alternate locations, what have you looked at in terms of using major arterials where you're away from the fronts of the houses, and it doesn't matter which side of the pole, and you may have poles that are 1.5 feet in diameter, some of them that go over the Oregon Expressway, and there's certainly space on them.
So the reason why we're using the utility poles is we're trying to serve where the demand is. And so small cells have a very
70 feet is not accurate.
Let me finish. So what I wanted to say is I'm not familiar off the top of my head with your specific location, but for all of the sites where we've submitted applications, we've also included an alternatives analysis, evaluating all the poles in the nearby area, explaining why they wouldn't work, or maybe if they could, if they're by the alternate. I went on the walk with Kirk, and we evaluated all the poles in his area as well, and would be happy to do that with you if you wanted to talk about it.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Yeah, for my case, it's very. I mean, there are other posts that I believe will be. They claim that it's not possible, like all the time. And then about vaulting, actually, the house actually the what they call it in the 10.E flood zone, right next to mine on the street. Right next door, that place actually may be even in more hazard zone than my house is in. Basically, they have a vault, a big vault there, AT&T sign right there. So there are different types of vaults available. City of Palo Alto vaults. I don't understand.
The equipment that we use is different. City of Palo Alto utilities,
Yep.
their connections are waterproof, so their vaults are full of water regularly as they go to visit them, and that doesn't work for our equipment. And I wanted to make one last comment regarding the pole selection. So because City of Palo Alto utilities has to abide by GO 95, which is through the CPUC, which is regard for safety, there are only certain areas of the pole that we can put the equipment, and there's only certain poles that we can use for safety reasons.
They
And
still
that's for
have to be
people to be able
accessible
to
for the
service,
people that
exactly.
maintain wire service off of the poles, which means Comcast, AT&T.
Oh, I see. So you mean like people climbing up the pole?
Yeah,
Correct.
they're
Oh, I
gonna
see.
still be
There are
allowed
limitations.
until AT&T puts in 5G at the neighborhood box and fires all those installers.
I
They
see.
got to get up and down.
I see. So that dictates where on the pole you.
Right, so
I
there's
see, I see,
quadrants on the pole, and in most cases we try to select the one where it makes the most sense and it's the least intrusive visually. And we could look at this to see. Well, so the plan department has criteria. They had preferences on the location, whether or not we could rotate it a certain way, the equipment. And the reason for that is because it's called climbing space. There has to be 90 degrees available on the pole as required by the utility department and the CPUC for access. So unfortunately, we don't have as much flexibility as you might like.
So I buy all of that, and it falls short, I think. So in other words, I feel like just saying this is the best we can do isn't a justification for the city deciding, well, then we're going to do it because that's the best we can do. If it's not good enough, we shouldn't do it. If it's not in line with what the residents desire for our aesthetics and our living environment, then it can't be done.
One other thing, there's an alternative between putting it up on the pole and putting it underground. There are concrete foundations that are as much as a foot and a half high, where there's a metal box with cooling or whatever, but natural ventilation, where a lot of the older neighborhood boxes where they used to use punch downs, which could not touch water, you had to keep the water out completely. And between my home, where that pole is, and Oregon Expressway, there's a nice big one, and added onto it that has a concrete footing, 1.5 feet high, 3-4 feet wide, 1.5 feet front to back.
So-
and then there's an equipment cabinet on it. So when the cable initiative came out and they worried about having cable boxes in all the neighborhood, you'd see some little mushroom thing sitting some places, you'd see a flat metal plate other places. They were able to solve problems that way, but in this particular case, we don't have to worry about water, but you'd have to deal with a box somewhere in front of somebody's hedge instead of front of their driveway.
So are you advocating that we, instead of having it on the pole, you have it on the ground? Is that?
You could,
But
but you'd have to place it
foot
differently than you're
box.
going to place those, because you're going to have a 3 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot
Okay.
metal box over a concrete foundation.
We have them, but they're much big. They're about 6 feet.
Yeah, I'm saying they're those kind
Well,
of things there now.
just out of curiosity for the residents here, what do you guys prefer, like on the pole or the boxes on the ground? Or what- Okay.
I think the other part of vaulting that to take into consideration is that there are, and Jennifer may be able to speak to this better than I can, articulate better than I can, but a lot of times people's front yard is coming into the public right of way, and so it would require a vault, the vault that we have and the size that we have, if we're to ignore the fact that we are going to not comply with the city of Palo Alto noise ordinance, you're going to cut into people's front yard to put a vault. And then in the event that Palo Alto as a city decides to underground the utilities, right, and utility poles, we will remove the equipment from the pole, but you will still have a vault there. And so that infrastructure is still,
So
it's a permanent infrastructure.
what will you do then about your customers who get poorer reception when that equipment is removed?
Under the master license agreement, I believe it was anticipated that we would relocate to streetlights, because if you're removing all the utility poles and everything's underground, you're still going to need streetlights for light. So we would integrate into that type of solution.
And so you would still have go through this process again of putting antenna on street lamps and the equipment that goes with it.
That's my understanding.
So we are down to our last minute. Any other thoughts anyone would like to share on this topic?
I would just like to make one last comment. I just we've built a mock site for people to visit. It's at across the street from the Art Center, 1350 Newell Road.
Okay, we'll put this in the postings that
And
people
it's not operational, but you can see the scope of the design. And actually, just 2 poles down is an existing AT&T site, so you can see the contrast between the 2 designs.
Okay, guys.
Thank you for telling me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming on Mother's Day. Appreciate it.
So I've posted the notes so you guys can take a look if you need it. And so we need to leave, so if you could fix it as soon as
If you want to
Let me give you, absolutely, can you give me my card?
Yeah.
sincerely believe that you